Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sun and Soil. My name is Cece Clark.
And I'm Noah Spickelmeyer.
And today we're going to be talking about something we all love. We have it every single day. Well, not everyone, but if you're addicted to it, you probably, like me, have it every single morning and then some. What are we talking about?
We're talking about coffee.
Yes, but we're talking about coffee with a twist. What kind of coffee are we talking about?
We're talking about coffee with no beans, made a little differently from the people at Compound Foods. And so today we talk to Matt from Compound. Here's Matt.
My name is Matt Hittlinger, and I'm a fermentation scientist at Compound Foods / Coffee. And we're a beanless coffee company. And what that means is we're trying to recreate coffee flavors by using not coffee. So coffee is going to be threatened by climate change in the future. So we're trying to get ahead of that and create a product that uses fermentation to create coffee-like flavors. So it's been a long road. We've been in business for about 3 years. But yeah, that is Compound Foods in a nutshell. So if you think about coffee, it's grown typically at a higher elevation. We've got this coffee belt going around the equator, basically. And so the majority of our coffee comes from that area, and that area is threatened by climate change. So what we're going to see in the future is we're no longer going to be able to get coffee in the same area. There might be a little bit more arid, less water for the coffee farms. Our founder is from Costa Rica, a huge coffee producing area, and she wants to get ahead of this climate change. She sees it going on down there in Costa Rica like firsthand. So she started this company, Compound Foods. Her name is Marcel, and we put together some prototypes of what you typically think of like beanless coffee, things that taste like coffee, chicory, some other ingredients, roasted ingredients. And what we try to do with it is fermentation. Fermentation can enhance some flavors. We see that in coffee fermentation now. So when you process coffee, you've got this wonderful little coffee cherry with the bean inside. That coffee cherry, like that fruit itself, is full of sugars and a little bit of protein, all kinds of different ingredients, all kinds of different nutrients. And then depending on how that coffee is processed, they basically remove that fruit. And after that, there's a little bit of fermentation that goes on. So if you go to your specialty coffee store, you're going to find coffees that say washed and natural and honey processed. These are all different types of processing that goes on and subsequent fermentation in the coffee bean. So that's just the first start of it. Obviously, there's fermentation that goes on. Different microbes are active in it. And then the roasting happens. And that's where all those little compounds that the fermentation produced come to produce the coffee flavor that we know and love. So what we're doing with beanless coffee is we've looked at what does that fruit hold as far as nutrients? What does that coffee bean hold as far as nutrients? And we chose upcycled ingredients that matches that profile, as well as more drought resistant and ingredients that use less water, and package that together. And with the power of fermentation, we're hoping to turn that into coffee. So it's easier said than done. There's a lot of hiccups along the road. Coffee is very special in what it contains, and the coffee bean itself is special. But how we're going about it is we've got this blend, and then we're looking at what actually ferments coffee beans. So we're actually getting coffee beans from different farmers around the world. We've got stuff from Ecuador, Mexico, Hawaii, even here in California. There's a place in Santa Barbara called Fringe. So what we're doing is we're taking those in. We've got a wonderful microbiologist that sees what is on there. She pulls off the yeast, the bacteria, sees if any of them are beneficial, if they're any good, they're not harmful. We grow them up in a lab, and then we try them on our ingredients. It ferments, we roast it, and then we try it as a group. So we try these on a daily basis, typically, and then this is also going through analysis as far as gas chromatography. So we're looking at volatile compounds, like the wonderful aroma from coffee. We're trying to match that. So we use a little bit of analytical chemistry to see if we're on the right path.
And so you mentioned you're using upcycled ingredients, and you mentioned chicory, which is a historical use as a coffee alternative. At several points in U.S. history, chicory has been used as a substitute for coffee, as a way of just making coffee supplies go farther when prices got too expensive or the supply chain got too overly complicated. One point was during World War II when it was blended with coffee to make chicory coffee blend. And you can find the remnants of that today at Café Dumont, which is a brand of coffee from New Orleans that supplies the coffee chicory blend.
Yeah. So we have the product that we're launching. We've got two separate products going on. The first product that is launching, it's like a duo of products, is our cold brew product, which is to imitate a cold brew coffee. It's going to be a canned product. And then we have a cold brew oat milk latte too. So those are two cans that'll be available soon. We're also trying to do a little bit of food service with that. But what that is a combination of like some chicory, sunflower seeds, grape seeds, lentils, all these things that we can roast and get good flavors out of. And then about 25% of that liquid in that can is fermented. We then extract it, go through like a whole cold brew procedure. So that is the cold brew project. And then we have the grounds project, which is what we're working on with like the other ingredients. So we're looking at vegetables. We're looking at we've tried everything from, we've tried everything. We've tried to ferment everything, which is cool. But everything from like fava bean hulls to kind of go oak chips to green beans to peppers to all kinds of stuff, trying to match up with that coffee bean. Yep.
Is there anything you cannot ferment?
So as long as it has like sugar or something, we can ferment it. So as long as there's sugar available in some form, a lot of those are really good at like breaking down complex sugars. So depending on what's in there, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, vegetables, fruits, all kinds of stuff can ferment as long as there's a little bit of sugar there. And if not, we can add some and then see what happens if it affects the flavor too.
In regards to like upcycling stuff, I imagine that can be pretty like tough logistical process. And, I know you're on the fermentation side, but what's the benefits of upcycling? And then what are some obstacles that you guys have found with it?
Yeah. So the big thing about coffee is, like I talked about, the coffee belt is moving it from the coffee belt to your coffee shop. So there's a huge carbon footprint that goes along with that. That's probably the biggest impact that coffee has. But what we're doing is we're specifically selecting ingredients that we can get in the U.S. So we're already reducing the carbon footprint of getting it in, and then finding stuff that is not requiring a lot of water to grow. So those are the two things that we're tackling. So we do limit our options as far as there's other ingredients we want to use, but we're really limited to what we can grow in the U.S. And then as far as working with producers, working with suppliers, we've got some unique ingredients. We're not the only beanless coffee people out there, and there's a couple people vying for certain ingredients out there. But we're trying to find things that are cast off. We might even go look back at coffee grounds in the meantime to see if there's something there that we can use and benefit the industry as a whole and the environment as a whole. So yeah, that's where we're looking as far as logistics. We try to keep within the U.S. and particularly within California.
That's really awesome because grown outside the U.S., you can't guarantee labor laws and practices. And so finding products to use in the U.S. is really awesome. And, that's a great part of it that I didn't even think about.
And something I'm kind of wondering about too is what was your trial and error process when you're first like deciding what ingredients were gonna go in? Like, is there anything that really didn't work? Was there a moment where you realized something was working?
Yeah, it's been frustrating. So you've got people in the Bay Area that are trying to use AI to put together, protein mixes and stuff like that to create cheese textures and looking for other protein mixes. So we could have gone that route as far as analyzing what's in there, plug that into AI, see what happens. But we've got a bunch of talented food scientists on our staff that have really dug into the literature as far as like what's available out there. We're looking for specific compounds in certain ingredients. So that does narrow down the focus a little bit of what we're looking for. Things that we've tried that are weird. Yeah, we're open to trying anything, and then we're going to see if we can source it after that, or if it makes sense. But yeah, weird things like lotus seed have a weird kind of note to it. Gosh, yeah, we've fermented all kinds of stuff. Millet, like I said, oak chips, green beans, peaches, okra. There's all kinds of stuff that's we've tried before and that hasn't really worked. So
Hmm.
Um, and then we saw too that Minus is doing stuff in regards to helping coffee farmers work towards a more profitable farming for them, away from coffee in the way of like agroforestry and stuff like that. Could you
yeah,
speak to that?
sure. I can't remember the group offhand directly, but they are working with.
We checked their website. This group is called DeSelva.
What other
Yeah,
ingredients go into the beanless brewing?
you're seeing in this coffee belt, you've got a whole bunch of people that are involved in coffee because it has been profitable in the past, although we don't always see that trickle down to the farmers like much like we normally see in like we agriculture typically doesn't favor the farmers as far as profits. But so people are leaving the coffee industry down there. So families are kind of like separating. People are trying to find work in some other fields. So what we're trying to do is what else can we put there? So the company that we're working with, but there's a lot of work with like growing ginger and turmeric and other high value items.
That's awesome. That's awesome to see.
I'm curious how you figured out how to match the actual flavor of coffee. Was it just through trial and error? Was like I know you mentioned the AI stuff originally, but like how did you how did you figure that out? 'Cause it seems hard to do.
Oh yeah, I mean we're we started with roasted like for the cold brew product. We're starting with roasted ingredients. We know that if we can either coffee's roasted, if we can extract some of those same compounds, we might start with a roasted flavor. We might get close. Can fermentation then pull us a little bit closer? With the cold brew product, we can get some like nice fruity cherry flavors that you get in some specialty coffees that start to come. Some of these specially fermented coffees, we get the same flavor in our beanless cold brew product. So yeah, there's a lot of trial and error. I mean, you're talking about months and months of just little jars of different iterations and trying things and just between the microbes too. Like a different yeast is going to produce completely different compounds than the others. So you've got a different mix of, hey, these ingredients work, and then you start experimenting with microbes and see, hey, can I bump that up a level? Can I get a nice dried fruit note out of that? Oh, I want a buttery pie crust note out of that. So can I achieve that with the microbes? That's what we're trying to find out. So it's a lot of little ratio adjustments on roasted items that we think might work, and then fermentation follows that. So
Cool.
we've got a fermentation group and a product development group going on tackling this, and yeah, we've got some smart people working for us, and it's pretty cool.
What kind of microbes are you using for the fermentation?
Yeah, so we looked at like I said before, we're talking about we're bringing in coffee cherries from around the world. So we look at literature of coffee research, what's going on in fermentation, what's being listed there, and lo and behold, we're finding a lot of the same things on the cherries that we're bringing in. You've typically got a bacteria that's in there that's acidifying, converting some of those sugars into some sort of acid. You've got things breaking down complex sugars like pectins and all kinds of other things in that bean or in that coffee cherry, and then a lot of that stuff kind of like floats into the bean. So we're selecting acidifiers like we typically find like leuconostoc, which is a lot of vegetable fermentations, leuconostoc mesenteroides. We got a lot of lactobacillus, bacillus species. So these are really good acidifiers, and we find those in a lot of wild ferments too. They'll typically take over um, after a while. And then we also have a whole little like symphony of yeast coming in too. So there's yeast coming in there. They're producing some of these like fruity notes, thiols, esters. They're also munching on different kinds of sugars and converting different stuff. So there's a whole little balance and dance of bacteria and yeast that goes on, and we try to keep that in equilibrium. Try to find out where's the best balance of that.
That's really cool. I remember when I was at Davis for like our fermented foods class. The professor talked about how coffee fermentation was like relatively. He said that it was like not super well understood, and that it was a big opportunity for the future of the coffee industry. So it seems that like you guys are like really doing some interesting stuff in regards to like this niche of fermentation that hasn't been explored.
There's some really cool stuff going on. So if you follow especially coffee trends, you'll find out that there's a whole bunch of people doing different things. You guys are in San Diego, so Bird Rock Roasters. We had a coffee from them that was a pineapple fermentation. So they got it in, and then they made like a what's like a tapache, which is like a pineapple fermentation, slightly alcoholic. And I think they soaked their beans in that,
Yeah.
and then like roasted it and brewed it from there. So people are doing all kinds of cool stuff. There's a group in St. Louis called Omega Yeast, or sorry, Quarrelsome Coffee, and they work with Omega Yeast, and they're sending people down there to ferment on site, because it's hard to ship cherries up here without them spoiling and fermenting. So you got to go down there. There's a gal, her name is Lucia Salas, who's teaching farmers how to ferment their beans. So with fermentation, you can actually take a moderately good bean and turn it into a slightly better and get a higher price point. So there's some education going on there on the farmer level too. But I think there's a whole world that needs to be tapped, because there's probably consistency lacking. There's only a handful of commercially available coffee cultures that people are using. So there's a huge opportunity for someone to get in there and really dig into what's going on, and then drive the future of coffee fermentation.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned Bird Rock, because we in San Diego, we've been to Bird Rock many times, and I actually got the email. I had signed up for their email, and I got the thing about the pineapple coffee, and I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds really cool, and like just hadn't heard about it before. So that's really funny you mention it.
Yeah, we try to bring in all types of different coffees, just because we love coffee there. We talk about it all day. So we're always trying new things and different fermentations. So
You
cool.
mentioned someplace in Santa Barbara, which that grows coffee in California, which is that I mean that's really crazy. It's cool. This is really cool because, as you probably know, coffee is grown in the Coffee Belt region, which is the areas around the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. And never before has coffee been grown on the U.S. mainland in California. We all know Kona coffee in Hawaii, but California coffee is a much newer thing. And it's really exciting to see people innovating in the coffee industry and growing locally grown coffee.
They do. Yeah, they're called Fringe, FRINJ, and it sounds like a co-op of the people in like the Santa Barbara area, that are contributing to this coffee farm. They have high level coffee. It's not cheap, but they are trying to get a footprint. And yeah, they're really nice people. They provide us with some cherries every once in a while. We've toured that farm. I know I'm not promoting tours or anything. I don't know whether they offer tours, but we were able to go down there at one point and pick some cherries for ourselves, and we used some of their cherries in our experiments, when we're really trying to see like what's going on with the coffee cherry. But yeah, cool people. I think they got a whole bunch of different co-op like farmers that are growing for them. And I think one of them I saw on their website is the music artist Jason Mraz. He's growing coffee for them. So
Yeah, I heard about that as well, and that was a funny little. I was like, oh, that's interesting, but
yeah.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And then yeah, like you mentioned the canned cold brew and the canned oat milk latte, and then a roasted ground coffee.
Yeah, that'll be our long term, and that's something that we're still working on. We're hoping to launch that within a year. That still needs some work. Like I said, it's not easy trying to recreate the magic of what the coffee bean. But yeah, we're making progress on that, and so that's something that we're looking at, and that would be a ground product that you would just put in, how you do your drip coffee maker or pour over. It'd be the same kind of thing. The only thing that we do add to it is caffeine, so we're getting a natural caffeine that we do add to it, but we would plan on offering like a decaf option too, something like that.
Where do you get your caffeine from?
Yeah, I believe it is a tea. It is from tea right now. Um, Actually, yes, it is from tea leaves.
It's just really cool that you guys can kind of fine tune, like you said, you mentioned that the roasted you're working on is of different inputs than the canned cold brew, and it's really cool that you can fine tune different products and use different microbes and inputs and have different outcomes and like really fine tune it, is what it seems like you guys are working towards.
Yeah, and then the whole roasting too, roasting level and like that, getting that temperature right, we found out is way more important. So we've got, very talented people working on different aspects of it, and it's got to come together perfectly. And I think we're getting close. So we're pretty excited about it. It's fun. We have a good time doing it. We welcome the challenge. So yeah, we're excited about it, and we hope that we can share it with people soon.
What does like a larger scale fermentation look like for you guys? Like, is it kind of like a like brewing, like in that sense? Are you using equipment similar?
Yeah, good, really good question because that was an issue because we do not have our own production facility. So we are looking when we set out to do this cold brew product, we're like, we've got a fermented product. We also need to extract it. So we're looking at like, can coffee people help us? No, they don't really want to help us that much. Can brewers help us? Yeah, brewers are right in our kind of, you're right, fermenters, that sort of thing. They handle grain, they handle sort of roasted ingredients in some cases. But then we also found, hey, kombucha makers are kind of right in between. So
Yeah.
we've actually kind of found kombucha makers are, someone that can handle the fermentation, can handle the extraction process that we use, and then um, we found people subsequently, to that can and things like that. So we're trying to keep it as local as possible, as environmentally conscious, that we're not shipping ingredients all over the place. But yeah, there kombucha makers seem to be the sweet spot for people that can handle what we're doing.
Yeah, because they do tea and botanicals a lot too. So that's, yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, that's actually pretty awesome. Yeah, I think where, so you said it's in the works. Where will people be able to find Minus once it's hit the stores, hit the shelves and whatnot?
Yeah, so we're looking at doing a hyper local strategy in San Francisco. So we're working with a couple people. We've got a couple coffee shops lined up, a couple retail locations, small markets in the area, and then we did have a online offering earlier this year or late last year. So we'll probably do that again once we have cans available. So people will be able to get that on shop-coffee.com. And if you follow along, we do a good job, I think, on our Instagram page of keeping people up to date on our progress. So we will, if you follow shop-coffee.com, we'll keep everyone up to date on where we are and where they can get us.
Great.
Nice.
And yeah, I guess, those were the majority of our questions, but is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't asked or you haven't mentioned yet?
No, I think we're excited about what we're doing. We hope that people are too, because I think that there's a lot of power in fermentation, and I think we have got a lot of people that are, really interested in tackling this climate change issue head on and making sure that we have stuff to enjoy in the future. We all love coffee, and we'll hopefully can continue to provide that for people. So you guys are awesome. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it looks like that's all for this episode of Sun and Soil. We want to thank you for listening.
We really hope that you learned something about how coffee and the coffee industry is changing and innovating today. It's really exciting stuff going on at Compound Foods. They're doing a lot to help make coffee more climate friendly, and it's really exciting to see what they're doing. So thank you, Matt, for talking to us, and we hope that you learned something new.
As always, please leave us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts. We very much appreciate it. You can follow us on Instagram at Sun and Soil Podcast, or if you want to reach out to us on email, you can email us. That's sunandsoilpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out our YouTube. I mean, it's going to be the same thing you're seeing here, only you can listen to it on YouTube. That's at Sun and Soil. And Check out the show notes. We're going to be linking pretty much everything we mentioned in this episode. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. By the way, Noah is doing a live show where he will be improvising the entire episode coming up on Monday. See you there.
Well, that's like the Joe Rogan style where you just talk.